Kia ora, good morning and welcome to Herald Now. My name is Nadine Higgins and it is Monday the 3rd of November. On the show today, the Simplicity KiwiSaver Fund is launching a new infrastructure company. It's called InfraKiwi. So how is it going to work and will it get our big, much needed infrastructure projects moving? The man with the plan, Sam Stubbs, is going to explain next. The PM has just arrived home from his trip to Asia. He met the two most powerful men on the planet, but what will it all translate into for us at home? Herald political editor Thomas Coughlan will have Luxon's wins and his losses. The All Blacks got their Grand Slam tour off to a winning start, eventually, in the last quarter. Our experts rate the performance against Ireland, and I'll talk to former All Black Ian Jones and the Herald sports team for their insights. Plus, the measles outbreak isn't slowing down. The latest public health advice. All of that still to come. Right now, here's the news with Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
The government says planning is underway to staff 140 new hospital beds across 5 hospitals. Health Minister Simeon Brown has announced new wards at Middlemore, Waikato, Wellington and Nelson hospitals, in addition to an already announced new ward at Hawke's Bay Hospital. The wards will be constructed off-site and then installed at the hospitals. Brown says each ward will be slightly different.
In Middlemore, it'll be helping to improve the flow through the hospital. In Waikato, it'll be more around the diagnostics, but attached to the emergency department.
More schools are introducing enrolment zones to manage growing student numbers. New Ministry of Education data shows more than 1,300 schools now have zoning schemes, more than twice as many as 2 decades ago. In Canterbury and Auckland, schools without zones have dropped by about a third in 5 years. Ministry Operations Leader Sean Teddy says zones prevent overcrowding and guarantee local students a place. He says families still have options if they want to attend a different school, including applying out of zone or considering private, charter or home-based education. Concerns about further measles transmission as more cases are linked to schools. There are now 17 active cases. 1 in Northland, 5 in Auckland, 1 in Taranaki, 2 in Manawatu, 6 in Wellington and 1 in Nelson. Some of the cases are linked to Wellington Girls College and Auckland Grammar School. Auckland University public health expert Michael Baker says it's a recipe for more spread.
If you're not immune and you spent a day in a classroom with someone else who was actively infectious, you're almost certainly going to get infected yourself.
Questions remain over the motivation behind a mass stabbing attack on board a train in the UK. 2 British men have been held on suspicion of attempted murder following the Saturday night attack, which forced the London-bound train to make an emergency stop in Huntingdon. 9 people suffered life-threatening injuries and 2 remain in a critical condition. Police don't believe it was a terrorist attack. Concerns a law cracking down on online harm is still only reaching the tip of the iceberg a decade on from its inception. The number of people with finalised charges under the Harmful Digital Communications Act has jumped from 18 in the first year to 114 in the past year. The number convicted of the most serious offence has risen from 12 to 75. Auckland University criminologist Claire Meehan says the rise is expected as enforcement becomes less cautious and awareness grows.
But I think it's really important to note most of the offences, they aren't reported, they're not recorded and they're not prosecuted.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Kiwis coach Stacey Jones has saluted the Pacific Championships as an advertisement for International Rugby League after his side beat Tonga 40-14 at Eden Park. Wellington have drawn 1-1 away against the Central Coast in A-League football. Golfer Dame Lydia Kos finished in a share of 9th at the latest LPGA event in Malaysia. An anonymous TAB punter could net over $732,000 from tomorrow's Melbourne Cup via a 12-leg multi-bet in January if Buckaroo finishes in the top 3.
Thank you very much, Neva. I don't know about you, but hearing terms like close contacts, contact tracing, vaccination levels, leaves me feeling a little triggered. And this, of course, relates to the latest measles outbreak. As you heard Neva say, there are 17 active cases at the moment, which doesn't sound like many. But if every infectious person can infect up to 18 others who aren't immune, that could change pretty quickly, right? And in 2019, the outbreak here resulted in more than 2,000 cases, and crucially, about a third of those ended up in hospital. Can the hospital system cope with that? But worse than that, we actually exported it to Samoa, and 83 people died, most of them children. And I get it, talking about vaccines immediately gets some people's hackles up, but our vaccine rates are too low for herd immunity. And if you're not immune and you're exposed, there's a 90% chance that you're going to get it. And therein lies the problem, mainly for our smallest and our most vulnerable. Those under the age of 1 aren't yet immunised. It's not on the immunisation schedule until they're 12 months old. And it's children that measles hits the hardest. I've got a 7-month-old baby at home, and I have to admit, it worries me. Should I take him with me to the supermarket, to the mall, to pick up his brother from kindy, which is a known hotbed of anything that's going around? The Minister of Health is receiving advice on whether infants should be immunised. I'd be grateful if he received that a little bit quicker before this outbreak gets any worse. And if you are not vaccinated, and you can be, please consider it on behalf of all of those who can't. Right, time for the weather.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Morena, good morning. A fine looking day for most of us, well away to start the week. High pressure very much in control of our weather this morning, which keeps most of us fine and dry, and with some pretty warm temperatures as well, especially down here in the south. 21 degrees Celsius in Invercargill. That's normally what we see this time of year in places like Kerry. Generally a fine, dry, sunny story right the way up through Otago, up into towards Canterbury, Marlborough, Tasman. Even on that western coast it stays dry, just a touch more cloud in places like Westport as we head through the afternoon. We'll find some cloudier skies, especially towards Taranaki and around in towards the likes of the Kapiti Coast later in the day. But even here, plenty of sunshine, fine, dry, sunny story up this eastern coast as well. Areas of cloud bubbling up over the higher ground of Taupo, but generally a good looking day here too. As we head northwards, we'll meet some cloud running in from the top of the country and towards parts of Northland later in the day, but still plenty of sunshine as we head through the rest of Monday.
And how good does a bit of sunshine feel after the wild weather of late? First this morning, we have a massive infrastructure deficit in this country, $210 billion odd, and fixing it takes too long and it costs too much. So Simplicity has launched InfraKiwi, which is a new company aiming to invest in New Zealand's key infrastructure, all the stuff from energy, water, transport. It's going to be locally owned and expected to be largely funded by KiwiSaver capital. So how's it going to work? And how could it change how we build and pay for the infrastructure we so desperately need? Sam Stubbs is Simplicity's Managing Director. Good morning to you, Sam.
Good morning, Nadine. Hi.
Can you give us an idea how InfraKiwi will actually work? Are you going to build the infrastructure or invest in the infrastructure? How is it going to go?
Yeah, so what we're intending to do is basically seed this ourselves with some Simplicity KiwiSaver and investment funds, and then ultimately our aspiration is to get this listed on the New Zealand Stock Exchange so all New Zealanders can invest in it. And what it will do is it will buy the infrastructure that is already built or the infrastructure which has just been built. So we won't be developing it, but we will buy it once it's been developed. And that's a huge range of assets. That's, power, water, roads, schools, hospitals, courts, all the infrastructure that we all need and use. And the idea here, Nadine, is that we as Kiwis, we're going to save hundreds of billions of dollars in KiwiSaver. Now, that could fund infrastructure overseas and you get the investment returns, but it wouldn't generate the jobs and it wouldn't generate the infrastructure that we use. So this is a Kiwi solution to a Kiwi problem. And the intention always is that InfraKiwi will only ever have New Zealand investors and New Zealand shareholders.
How will that work though? If you list on the stock exchange, won't that then open you up to anyone from anywhere investing in you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, but it is actually possible to restrict the shareholders that you have on the stock exchange. And we've had conversations with them, and they're perfectly happy for us to say, look, we only want New Zealand shareholders, because we can now afford to fund our own solutions, Nadine. In the past, we always had to go cap in hand to offshore investors to be able to afford the really big ticket items like infrastructure. But now with KiwiSaver, we can afford to do this ourselves, as they have done in Australia. So effectively what we're doing is what they've done in Australia, Canada, the UK, the US, and so on, which is actually create a really large local infrastructure investment vehicle. And that'll give us access to the sort of investments we don't think offshore buyers would be allowed to buy here.
Typically, though, we need to diversify, right, our KiwiSaver investments. How will that be maintained if you're ploughing so much into New Zealand infrastructure?
Yeah, sure. So what we will start off doing is putting actually a small amount of the very large amount of money we already invest to seed this. And ultimately what we want is for all Kiwis and all KiwiSavers to invest a little bit of what they have in the infrastructure that we use. So typically overseas, of a typical KiwiSaver-like retirement portfolio, about between sort of 5 and 20% would be in infrastructure. And remember, these are the bills that we all pay, right? So they are typically very reliable cash flow generating investments. This is, power companies, water companies, toll roads, things like that. So they're very long-term reliable investments because we use them and we pay for them. And because of that, you can have a slightly larger allocation than you normally would. But the average KiwiSaver fund will still have thousands of investments in many different countries. This will just be one of them.
If you're not building it, you're just buying it with this company, how is that going to actually encourage more of it that we so desperately need?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'll give you an example. We often talk about a second harbour bridge in Auckland, right? And what happens is one government pays for a whole lot of, surveys and reports and so on. The next government rips them up. But if one government did that, decided and committed and said, look, you build it, and in this case, we use as an example, InfraKiwi will buy it at the end, that means that government, and that's now contract law, that government will actually be obliged to build it, and subsequent governments will, because we'll be buying it. So we will facilitate the building of it, because then the government knows who the long-term owner will be. And that could happen in a whole lot of areas. It's not just roads. It could happen with power grids, water networks, sewage treatment plants, all the stuff that we use. And so if we were going to be the ultimate buyer and the long-term operator and holder of that asset, that would encourage people to buy them, including the government. And so in that sense, you might be selling the family silver, but you're selling it to the family. You're just selling it to Kiwis. And in a way also, it's a way of getting public ownership, but without the government.
It's a really interesting concept, and Lord knows we need it. Thank you so much, Sam Stubbs. Look forward to seeing how you go. Sam Stubbs, Simplicity's Managing Director. Now, if you'd like to weigh in on that or any of our topics today, please do. Send us an email. Do you think InfraKiwi is the answer to our infrastructure issues? Would you like to hear more? Send us an email, heraldnow@nzherald.co.nz. That's heraldnow@nzherald.co.nz. We'd love to hear from you. Now, an update on the story over the weekend in the UK. British police have given an update on a mass stabbing on a train bound for London. They've arrested 2 men on suspicion of attempted murder and say there is no evidence, though, that it is a terrorist event. Witnesses
were taken to hospital by ambulance, and another person self-presented later that evening. While 9 were initially believed to have life-threatening injuries, following assessment and treatment, 4, thankful to say, have been discharged. However, 2 patients remain in a life-threatening condition. British Transport Police declared a major incident yesterday, and counter-terrorism policing were initially supporting our investigation. However, at this stage, there is nothing to suggest that this is a terrorist incident.
Scenes on board the moving train as a man armed with a large kitchen knife jumped up from his seat and started attacking other passengers. One person says there was blood everywhere. Another heard shouts of "You need to run" as passengers attempted to flee the attacker. Other witnesses say the attacker was shouting, "The devil's not going to win." 11 were taken to hospital, and as we heard, 2 remain in a critical condition. Now, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon met with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC summit over the weekend, and it was a public display for what Luxon has called a personal conversation with one of our biggest trading partner, but also most complex diplomatic allies. Joining us to discuss what it all means is China expert and University of Canterbury Professor Anne-Marie Brady. Kia ora, Anne-Marie.
Kia ora.
We heard there, that it was a brief, informal meeting, and that the PM said he wanted to make sure we are still on the President's radar. Are we on his radar?
Well, I think we might be a little bit of a burr in the saddle after detaining a Chinese spy at Auckland Airport. So New Zealand government will want to show that we still have a friendly relationship with China at the moment, and we can engage on lots of positive things. Also, that meeting wasn't specifically, the meeting that Luxon was to attend, the APEC meeting, wasn't specifically about China, it was about diversifying our trade. So being able to have just a friendly visit to an important trading partner, even just to check in, was a sensible diplomatic move.
Well, and speaking of the diplomacy of it all, we kind of have been walking this tightrope between the US as our second biggest trading partner and China as our largest, while the two of them were at loggerheads. Are we managing that balance appropriately?
That's a very tired cliche that I'd like to retire. I don't think we walk a tightrope between the US and China, not at all. We have different relationships with them, and we have a very close relationship with the US, but of course things are difficult for every country with the US because of their tariffs and some very changed behaviour under the Trump administration. They're also very difficult with China. At the same time, there's things we can work on. So New Zealand has its own relationship with both countries and manages them separately, not side by side. It's not like the Cold War era where we wouldn't do anything without consultation with the US on regard to our relationship with China. We've got an independent foreign policy, and we move carefully and astutely with our relations with each one, dealing with a really difficult global environment where the great powers have returned to might is right type behaviour, which is really challenging for a small state where we rely on the rules-based international order.
Okay, retiring that cliche as of now. What then do you make of the meeting between Trump and Xi? Was that a positive development?
Yeah, I was watching the body language, and Xi Jinping was really holding himself in and not giving out much. And then Trump was very effusive, and he's putting his hand forward. Xi is often quite reserved in those formal settings of meeting leaders. But it seems like they've got a temporary working agreement. I'm here at the Koru Lounge, and my light's just gone off in my temporary studio. I'm back on again.
We so appreciate you talking to us. I believe it might have even been from the showers at the Koru Club. So
yes.
We really appreciate your time and your analysis, and we'll let you go before you end up in the dark. That is Professor Anne-Marie Brady, Canterbury University professor. And we're going to be talking to Thomas Coughlin, our political reporter, a little later to wrap up Luxon's visit. But first, if you're in Auckland, you cannot have missed the Tongan flags that have been driving around the city over the past week. They did lose to the Kiwis over the weekend, but that did not stop them celebrating, and boy, do they know how to celebrate. Thousands descended on Atkinson Ave, which is in the Auckland suburb of Otahuhu, turning what is a 650-metre strip bright red. Take a look at this. A Herald photographer was there and said that the street was simply transformed into the ultimate fan zone. There was music blasting, horns tooting, those ubiquitous flags waving, and fans of all ages were there celebrating. Families, grandparents and the young all dancing together. They needed traffic control. There were so many out on the streets, and police eventually did move in, blocking roads and diverting traffic away. And the Herald photographer said it was a very positive atmosphere and a full-on party. Imagine what it would have been like if they had won. Now, I mentioned earlier this morning that measles cases are continuing to climb, with 17 cases now confirmed and health teams racing to track thousands of close contacts. Health New Zealand says many of the cases have been linked, but warns there is still a very real risk of a wider spread. So with an update, with us is Dr. Matthew Reid, Public Health Medicine Specialist at Health New Zealand. Kia ora, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nadine.
How concerned are you? I feel quite concerned, but I'd like someone in the know to tell me whether I should be concerned.
Yeah, we are concerned. Measles is a worrying condition. We don't have the vaccination rates that we need in the country to protect us from a potentially large outbreak. That's why we're putting all that effort into contact tracing and increasing immunisation rates.
But given how infectious it is, are those methods, those measures, going to be enough to contain the spread?
Contact tracing is what we have without being, more disruptive. We want life to be able to go on as usual. And so we're identifying people that are exposed, rapidly getting in contact with them using whatever means we can. We work with the places where exposure happens, try to work out everybody who's been exposed, get in contact with them, and make sure that they are supported to stay in quarantine, to protect other people. And we're doing that. We've increased the capacity of our contact tracing to do that.
It sounds like you're doing what you can. I guess what I'm asking is, will that be enough? And given that last time, a third of cases ended up in hospital, and we know the health system is under strain, can we handle that?
That would be, it's a good question about the health system and how prepared it is for that. Measles is a well-known old disease. It can make people really sick. For younger children, it is particularly bad. Also, pregnant women and immunosuppressed people, people without strong immunity. Yeah. So this week we're running the immunisation week. We really want as many people as possible to get vaccinated, and that's why we're going ahead today, and it's being launched today.
Yeah, and I guess if more people had been vaccinated in the first place, we wouldn't be in this position. Thank you for your time this morning, Dr. Matthew Reid, Public Health Medicine Specialist at Health New Zealand. And as he mentioned, though, the young are the most vulnerable, so if you can be vaccinated, please do. Coming up, we are going to be talking to former All Black Ian Jones, who's going to break down that win over Ireland and that late surge. We'll be back right after this.
Oh, no lemming tech solutions experts.
Here to set up your new smart TV.
Oh, goody. We're a family of 4, so we need it done perfect. Too high. Too low. Just right.
Of course, we can assess your Wi-Fi network and run a speed test. And now check out these features. This is how you get to streaming.
We love streams.
Nobody has supreme knowledge of home TV setup like Noel Leeming.
Here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference. But 2 degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost centre reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
You can have what she's having.
Ready?
One Roof Property. Love where you live.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea. That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
do try it.
You're watching Herald Now, and it was a busy week on the international stage for our politicians. We had Luxon at APEC and Winston in the Nordics, and plenty happening back home with Labour's leaks and the capital gains tax announcement. Now, with Parliament back in session this week, attention turns to the week ahead. New Zealand Herald's political editor Thomas Coughlin is with us with more. Good morning, Thomas. How would you rate Luxon's time in APEC? He's pretty much fresh off the plane. Out of 10, how'd he go?
Gosh, out of 10, that's putting me on the spot. I think he had a pretty good week at APEC. It's a really big talking shop for us, APEC. Basically, it's 21 countries. They're some of the largest, or economies. They talk about economies rather than countries at APEC. Some of the largest economies in the world: China, the US, even Russia's sort of part of that group. And it's a really good opportunity to get in the room with these people and kind of press New Zealand's interests. You don't get those opportunities in other parts of the kind of multilateral world. Places like the UN, they're so big that New Zealand sort of gets lost. So I think he did quite well. I think that Trump meeting clearly went very well. Trump is a famously mercurial person. So sort of being able to meet Trump and not walk away with a sort of a repeat of the Zelensky situation is certainly a victory. But the proof of the pudding is always in the eating, and it doesn't look like, at least in the coming years, while Trump is still in the White House, that there's much upside for New Zealand in terms of the global trading environment. And that is concerning, but that is not something that Christopher Luxon could really be expected to change. It is just an annoying and frustrating fact of our lives at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the shots, he's rubbing shoulders with some of the most powerful leaders in the world, and then here he is from little old New Zealand. But do the conversations they have on the sidelines to make friends amount to much, or is it just about, a little bit like he said with Xi Jinping, kind of reminding them that we're here?
Yeah, I think it's. I think both of those points are correct. It's a sad fact of life being the New Zealand Prime Minister that you do. Part of your job is reminding other people that we're here. It is. We are a small country, and we're pretty realistic about that. You do need to be in the room, though. These places like APEC, they are quite important in discussing the international trading architecture. And if that goes south, then New Zealand really needs to be in the room to be able to press our interests. The comprehensive and progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP, the architecture of that was agreed at an APEC conference a few years ago. So it's big agreements like this, or the final parts of that were agreed at an APEC conference. The big things that really affect us often come out of these conferences, so you really need to be in the room. The other thing, and I think Christopher Luxon actually made this point, is it's important just to remind people, we're here, remind people of our interests, and that means that if something really bad does happen, that these people know who Christopher Luxon is, and he can pick up the phone to them and say, like, we're not happy about this, or we think this should happen, and you're only able to get your foot in the door if they know who you are.
Yeah, I was laughing because you will not be the first nor the last to trip over the CPTPP. They really need to come up with a friendlier acronym. To the week ahead, Parliament is in session. What's on the agenda?
Yeah, Parliament's in session. We've got a post-cabinet press conference today. The big thing hanging over Parliament this week is the reaction to Labour's capital gains tax announcement. The capital gains tax has been difficult for Labor in the past. It doesn't poll terribly anymore, but in the past it has come under scrutiny for details. Labor leaders have struggled to explain the details. So it'll be interesting to see whether now you've got all of the opposition, all the government together in Parliament, whether the government puts a wee bit of pressure on Labor to explain how that tax will work and is able to come up with some arguments, some fishhooks about why it should not be implemented. So it's quite an interesting session of Parliament this week, because it's really the first session since Labor went into opposition that Labor is in the hot seat and Labor's having to defend something rather than the government. So that'll be quite fascinating.
An interesting week ahead. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Thomas Coughlin, the New Zealand Herald's political editor. Well, we need to talk about the rugby. There was a bit of a shaky start in Chicago, but then the All Blacks roared home to beat Ireland 26-13, sealing the match with 3 rather late tries. So joining us now to unpack the game is former All Black with over 100 test caps and GM of the All Blacks experience, Ian Jones. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, yeah. Good morning.
What are we to make of that? It did look like a shaky start.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful to get the win and get the Northern Tour off on the right set, so momentum's really good. Frustrating, not only for All Black rugby, I think, frustrating for world rugby for that first 60 minutes, because you have, in my opinion, taken the greatest game of the world to this huge sports market, America and maybe the rest of the world, and world rugby gives them that stop-start, so no flow for the first 60 minutes. Our bench came on really strong, clearly stronger than the Irish bench, which is good for our rugby, and as you said, those 3 late tries kind of sealed it for us, so good. But I actually think an opportunity lost going to Chicago, this awesome market, and we didn't put on the spectacle that we all wanted.
Yeah, because I think it took almost 2 hours, didn't it, to play a game that's supposed to be 40 minutes each way. So
correct, and maybe the American market like that, right? They have the stoppers. We don't. We like flow. We want pace. We want the skill. All the things we know All Black rugby and Irish rugby actually can deliver. World rugby didn't give them that. For the first 60 minutes of this game. We got into that flow late on the game, which is wonderful for us. And tours like they're going on, is all about momentum. So they're in Scotland now. They'll be super pumped for the win. Revenge, not a great emotion, but it is an emotion. So to get one back over Ireland, Chicago would be pretty pleasing. And now they kick on to Scotland, a team that's never beaten the All Blacks before. And I think they'll be front of mind for a lot of these guys this week.
Yes, and I think my Scottish brother-in-law will be amping for the Scots. We are heading into that tour, though, with a couple of injury concerns. I saw 2 of the Barrett brothers were injured. Are we concerned about that?
No, because as we said, we had a bench coming off really strong. Well, we do have some depth, and that's what these tours is actually all about as well, We get sometimes locked into tradition of always winning matches, not always blooding people. Well, now we have a chance, maybe a new lock, maybe a second 5/8 with Geordie and Scott not playing, a chance to play other people. And I think in the long run, that's going to be really good for New Zealand rugby.
Yeah, and that's what we need, right? Good for New Zealand rugby.
Yeah, that's all we want. Depth, good for New Zealand rugby. But we also want, you and I, we wake up early on a weekend morning, we want to watch an attractive flowing game of rugby. I think the Scots will deliver that for us. So yeah, looking forward to this week as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Ian Jones, talking about the ABs over the weekend. It has just gone 7:30. It is time for the news with Neva.
Herald NOW News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
The government says planning is underway to staff 140 new hospital beds across 5 hospitals. Health Minister Simeon Brown has announced new wards at Middlemore, Waikato, Wellington and Nelson hospitals, in addition to an already announced new ward at Hawke's Bay Hospital. The wards will be constructed off-site and then installed at the hospitals. Brown says each ward will be slightly different.
In Middlemore, it'll be helping to improve the flow through the hospital. In Waikato, it'll be more around the diagnostics, but attached to the emergency department.
More schools are introducing enrolment zones to manage growing student numbers. New Ministry of Education data shows more than 1,300 schools now have zoning schemes, more than twice as many as 2 decades ago. In Canterbury and Auckland, schools without zones have dropped by about a third in 5 years. Ministry Operations Leader Sean Teddy says zones prevent overcrowding and guarantee local students a place. He says families still have options if they want to attend a different school, including applying out of zone or considering private, charter or home-based education. Concerns about further measles transmission as more cases are linked to schools. There are now 17 active cases. 1 in Northland, 5 in Auckland, 1 in Taranaki, 2 in Manawatu, 6 in Wellington and 1 in Nelson. Some of the cases are linked to Wellington Girls College and Auckland Grammar School. Auckland University public health expert Michael Baker says it's a recipe for more spread.
If you're not immune and you spent a day in a classroom with someone else who was actively infectious, you're almost certainly going to get infected yourself.
Questions remain over the motivation behind a mass stabbing attack on board a train in the UK. 2 British men have been held on suspicion of attempted murder following the Saturday night attack, which forced the London-bound train to make an emergency stop in Huntingdon. 9 people suffered life-threatening injuries and 2 remain in a critical condition. Police don't believe it was a terrorist attack. Concerns a law cracking down on online harm is still only reaching the tip of the iceberg a decade on from its inception. The number of people with finalised charges under the Harmful Digital Communications Act has jumped from 18 in the first year to 114 in the past year. The number convicted of the most serious offence has risen from 12 to 75. Auckland University criminologist Claire Meehan says the rise is expected as enforcement becomes less cautious and awareness grows.
But I think it's really important to note most of the offences, they aren't reported, they're not recorded and they're not prosecuted.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Kiwis coach Stacey Jones has saluted the Pacific Championships as an advertisement for International Rugby League after his side beat Tonga 40-14 at Eden Park. Wellington have drawn 1-1 away against the Central Coast in A-League football. Golfer Dame Lydia Kos finished in a share of 9th at the latest LPGA event in Malaysia. An anonymous TAB punter could net over $732,000 from tomorrow's Melbourne Cup via a 12-leg multi-bet in January if Buckaroo finishes in the top 3.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Morena, good morning. A fine looking day for most of us, well away to start the week. High pressure very much in control of our weather this morning, which keeps most of us fine and dry and with some pretty warm temperatures as well, especially down here in the south. 21 degrees Celsius in Invercargill. That's normally what we see this time of year in places like Kerikeri. Generally a fine, dry, sunny story right the way up through Otago, up into towards Canterbury, Marlborough, Tasman. Even on that western coast it stays dry, just a touch more cloud in places like Westport as we head through the afternoon. We'll find some cloudier skies, especially in towards Taranaki and around in towards the likes of the Kapiti Coast later in the day. But even here, plenty of sunshine, fine, dry, sunny story up this eastern coast as well. Areas of cloud bubbling up over the higher ground of Taupo, but generally a good-looking day here too. As we head northwards, we'll meet some cloud running in from the top of the country and towards parts of Northland later in the day, but still plenty of sunshine as we head through the rest of Monday.
Time now to talk business with our partners at 2 Degrees, and we've been hearing so far earlier this morning from Sam Stubbs about InfraKiwi. Its founders want to hatch their ambitious plan to use KiwiSaver money to own and run local power and water and other infrastructure. So can the InfraKiwi fly? Garth Bray from Business Desk joins us with more. This is kind of interesting, Garth, right? Because they're not going to be builders of infrastructure. They're going to be buyers of completed infrastructure. So who are they going to buy it from?
The takeout partner, right? This is the idea, is like you build it, we'll own it and run it. And actually this kind of thing already happens here now with, if you live anywhere south of Auckland, Papakura, Veolia, which is this massive French multinational, basically built and operates the water system under a franchise agreement with Watercare, and they've been doing that for decades. So it's not a new idea, but I guess the new part is this proposition they have that if you could get KiwiSaver funding into it, to seed it at least, and then you'd probably stack some debt on top of that as well, because something like this could borrow, given that people pay their bills, they pay their power bills, they pay their water bills. So lenders are going to go, okay, we'll lend
There's
to you
an
on
income
that.
stream, yes, you can have. Yep.
So they're talking about leveraging it probably 4 times whatever the KiwiSaver money is in there. But the idea being that the problem with that always is, we're selling it offshore. We've seen it recently with the Fonterra brands debate and Winston Peters jumping into the chat on that. Anytime anything's for sale, anywhere in the world really, people say, who's going to own it and what does it mean for control and where the money goes ultimately, you know? So I guess that helps short-circuit that argument if you can get around the idea that it could be Kiwis owning Kiwis. Sam Stubbs, when I asked him about this, said he claims he's gone around the country for the last 2 years dropping this question into all of his presentations whenever he does it. How many of you would like the idea that your local power lines company or water company is owned a little bit by your KiwiSaver? And he reckons 90% of the hands go up in favour. So broad support, but like you say, who's going to sell it to them? Which council is going to be brave enough? They do think councils are a high prospect because we were reporting on Business Desk earlier this year that Standards & Poor's had downgraded 18 local bodies and their council-owned organisations because they had a higher credit risk, basically. They didn't like the fact that their debts were high, that their revenue was not looking that great. And you've got the government, of course, talking about capping rates. So this presents an alternative, I suppose, for some of those councils. They have just turned over lately. You know, you've got a lot of fresh faces. So whether the ones that have been elected rather than re-elected are keen on it as well. But we saw in those local body elections that a lot of mayors and people in places where the rates went up got dumped. So this might be really well timed.
There's a tension though, isn't it? Because your KiwiSavers are going to need to see a return on the investment, and those using the infrastructure don't want to pay over the odds for it. So it will be really interesting to see how they go.
Yes, it's a balance, all right. Yeah.
The ACC is headed to court over the issue of working from home, and I suspect that lots of people have had the call from their boss recently, like, back to the office.
Yeah.
What's the issue here?
This one's just dropped this morning. This is the PSA's put out a notice saying that it's the union for most of those public sector workers, 1,200 of them, I think, at the ACC, saying, we don't like the fact that you said you're going to have to go from 2 days a week in the office minimum to 3, kicking in about a month's time. They said they haven't had enough time to consult on this. You told us about it an hour before you pushed button on that, so that's not fair. We're going to have a crack. I guess this is highlighting, though, some interesting ideas that we've been covering on Business Desk recently around working from home.
Is it an entitlement or a perk?
Well, yeah, there's no legal right to it in law, but Section 6AA of the Employment Contracts Act says you can go to your employer and say, I'd like a variation, I'd like to vary it, I'd like to do some remote working, and there is like a legal obligation, a process for them to look at that seriously and run through it. Similar kind of thing works on the other side of the Tasman, where the Fair Work Commission in Australia recently pinged Westpac massively and gave a mother of 2 young kids the right to work from home for Westpac for 5 days a week because they didn't go through all the right processes to check, exactly what she was asking for and give her a proper response. So I guess, although the laws are different on either side of the Tasman, the idea is the same. If you're a boss, be very careful. If someone asks for this, make sure you've gone through all the steps to carefully evaluate it.
Even if you're always going to say no, make sure you go through the process.
It's got to be a thoughtful no. Yeah.
Now, the FMA is warning a few lawyers and accountants that they're playing a little bit fast and loose.
Yeah, this Financial Markets Authority, they regulate, financial products and so on. And we unearthed this, actually, Maria Slade's property editor has been taking a bit of a deep dive in there, and they found 22 accountants and 8 lawyers, we don't know their names or who they work for exactly, were apparently flagged by the FMA and reported to their professional bodies because of wholesale eligibility certificates. Now, these are basically bits of paper they sign off to say, my client is big enough, smart enough and rich enough to play ball by themselves in a less regulated investment market.
So they're not mum and dad, that horrible term for just the great unwashed investor. They're
you and
sophisticated.
Me. Well, yes.
Supposedly.
Sophisticated implies the rest of us are unsophisticated. But like if it's a retail investment, if it's like putting money in a term deposit in the bank or whatever, there's always a big product disclosure statement around that. If it's a wholesale investment, it's sort of outside the fence. It's very lightly regulated. And the FMA went to court to try and work out whose responsibility. Should it be up to the scheme? And this is important because some of those big property investors, like the likes of your Wolfbrook Capital, Williams Corporation, E&O Property, and Duval and Black Robin particularly, were picked up by the FMA a couple of years ago and told you weren't using this quite right. The law on this, though, they took it to the court recently and said, hey, what's the story here? Who's responsible? Well, it's actually up to those lawyers, accountants and financial advisors to check that they're doing it right when they sign that bit of paper. FMA is saying, well, it's maybe not the best protection in the world. We're also a little bit worried, I suppose, that there's a bit of disagreement about what actually happened when they reported those advisors. It doesn't seem like an awful lot actually happened to them. So she's a pretty loose...
It's a really interesting issue because it's almost like you need your mum to sign your homework to say, yes, I am big enough and ugly enough to make my own decisions. Yeah,
well, I guess that's the thing. These things are there so that people can take a bigger risk and, you know, on their own heads fall it. It's just, are you really, really ready for that?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Garth. Interesting, as always, that is Garth Bray from Business Desk. Thanks to our partners at 2 Degrees. We're going to head to the South Island now, where a Christchurch principal is taking aim at the Ministry of Education. Claire Sherwood is News Talk ZB South Island News Director. Why are they taking aim at the Ministry of Education?
Yeah, this is Rowley School. It's located in Hoonhay here in Christchurch and has been in the news for a number of different things over the years. They have worked really hard on things like attendance rates and trying to get more students at school. They do some really innovative things in that space. But the reason we've spoken with the principal, Graham Norman, this week, Nadine, is that there's some concern around the introduction of an enrolment zone for the school. They have been told by the ministry that they need to introduce an enrolment zone, so effectively stop accepting students from anywhere and only select them from a very close perimeter around the school. Now, the principal has issue with that, obviously, around excluding students. They have quite a different style of learning there, so they do cater quite heavily to neurodiverse students, for example. But the real concern today is that the principal says he believes the ministry is making threats around the introduction of an enrolment zone. He says whilst the school is not at capacity at the moment, the role has grown very rapidly from about 100 students to 250 over the past few years. And the ministry forecasts that it will reach capacity. So they've come out and said, you must put in this enrolment zone. Graham Norman says we're not ready to do that. And they've basically petitioned against it. What he says, though, is the ministry has now come through and said, look, if you don't introduce the enrolment zone, then we won't be introducing new classrooms that you require to keep up with your role growth. The ministry is adamant that that is not a threat. Graham Norman, the principal, says it certainly sounds like a threat to him. The ministry, though, say, you know, in order to be safe around things like enrolment sizes and school capacity, they need to investigate other options before they just start building classrooms willy-nilly on school sites. So a bit of toing and froing between this principal and the ministry, but effectively this idea that they may not be able to keep up with growth unless they put in place an enrolment zone. Enrolment zones are increasing across the country. They've more than doubled over the past couple of decades. It is something that is very much seen as a norm now. So Rowley School is being pushed to be in line with others.
Yeah, we know what a thorny issue zoning can be for schools here in Auckland. Now, there are some plans at play to replace an abandoned mansion in Christchurch with accommodation. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we have lots of abandoned mansions in Christchurch, particularly post-quake, but the one we're looking at today is Antonio Hall. Anyone who's been in Christchurch will remember driving down Riccarton Road and seeing it there. I think there's a picture there on the screen of it. It's been abandoned post-quake. It's been in a very bad state for several years. It's incredibly old, built in about 1904, has been owned by the Catholic Diocese for a time, and then became owned privately, became very badly quake damaged, and has since been the site of lots of issues, several fires. There's also been squatting issues, homeless people living in there, and so on. So there's been many calls for something to happen with it. What we can now confirm is that the heritage status has been removed from the building, and instead Mainland Capital are working towards introducing student accommodation there and basically replacing the mansion with student accommodation. The site is less than a kilometre from Canterbury University. We know that Canterbury University is struggling with capacity, particularly around its student halls. So this would provide some much needed accommodation for students. Mainland Capital acknowledged that it is a shame to see the heritage status go. That said, the director there, Ben Bridge, says, look, it's plain and simple. It's far too far gone. It's not economically viable to repair it and to restore the economics, the historic status. So it just makes sense to replace it with student accommodation, which is, of course, a growing need here in Christchurch, like elsewhere.
It was beautiful in its heyday, but I think by the sounds of it, it's too far gone to get it back to that. Thank you so much, Claire Sherwood, News Talk ZB's South Island News Director. In a moment, we're going to be looking at your Monday markets thanks to our partners at Forsyth Bar. Then a little bit later, Dame Nolene Todua speaks after getting her job back. That is coming up before 9.
You Do It DIY can make your new dream kitchen a reality. As a trusted Kiwi manufacturer for 44 years, You Do It has made it easy to design, order and assemble your own dream kitchen, offering a range of colour options and flexible sizing. With excellent online support, our customers all agree that You Do It makes DIY easy, delivering superb quality at a great price. Get your project started today at nzherald.co.nz.
We have completed 4 builds with GJ. Every time we want to think of building, we always go back to GJ.
It's a really good experience throughout the whole process.
They deliver what they promise on, and it feels like working with a family member. It's very easy and trustworthy to work with GJ.
Stop paying the waiting tax. The money you could miss out on by delaying the start of your investment journey. Up your tempo with Tempo, the guided investment app that helps you get started. Don't delay because you don't think you have enough time, money, or know-how. All you need is a goal, and our guidance will help with the rest. Plus, this month, get a guaranteed $10 Kickstarter and the chance to win $1,000. Download Tempo now.
Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen, Kaylee Bell, Jelly Roll, Megan Moroney, Chris Stapleton. All the country stars have come to play on the all-new iHeart Country NZ. Your new home for country is iHeart Country NZ.
You are with Herald Now. It is time now for an update on the markets, thanks to our partners at Forsyth Bar, and I'm joined by Forsyth Bar investment strategist Zoe Wallace. Good morning to you, Zoe. We're in the midst of the US reporting season. What were the highlights from the past week?
We are indeed, and last week the focus was really on some of those big tech names reporting, which saw quite a wide divergence in terms of market reactions, to be fair. So we had everything from Amazon, who were up 10%, to Meta, who fell 14%. And look, part of that is just markets are continuing to look for the return on the huge amounts of investment that these firms are putting in around AI, artificial intelligence and data centers over coming, quarters and years. So big divergence in terms of what we saw. Some good results, though, in terms of generally, most were quite positive, actually, versus market expectations. But as I mentioned, a bit of a divergence in terms of market reaction.
And what is on the slate this week? Any big names?
Yeah, so it's actually sort of tailing off in terms of the international reporting season. We do still have a few big names worth keeping an eye on: Palantir, BP. But we're also actually starting to see the kickoff of Australian reporting season with some of their big banks reporting this week as well. So that will be attention turning to across the ditch. As well as that, we also have the Reserve Bank of Australia across the ditch, obviously has an important central bank monetary policy decision, same day as Melbourne Cup on Tuesday afternoon. They are very much now expected to leave interest rates unchanged, and markets have started to price out any further chance that they may actually cut this year, if at all, in 2026.
Well, their inflation rate is higher than ours, so I can see why they might be taking a bit of a pause there. This week at home, we're going to get some data on unemployment. Are we expecting it to rise further, Zoe?
Yeah, so a slight further increase to around 5.3%. Now, this is well off the low base that we came through, during COVID, but it actually isn't that bad in the scheme of historical unemployment rates here in New Zealand. However, it's obviously pretty painful for those on the ground in the labour market at this point in time. Reassuringly, we are starting to see some signs that things might be turning as we head into 2026. So some of those sort of more timely economic indicators around the labour market do suggest that firms are starting to look at hiring again, and that should keep the lid on the unemployment rate. at about 5.3 or 5.4% heading into the end of this year, and then hopefully steadying and starting to improve as we go through 2026. We're starting to see these signs of a cyclical upturn in New Zealand, and that will further support employment growth going forward.
Hey, just very briefly, there was that big meeting last week between President Trump and President Xi. They were discussing some things that are very significant for the US with regards to tariffs and rare earth minerals. How was that received?
Yeah, so it was a very busy week last week, and amongst that, plus a Federal Reserve policy decision and all these earnings announcements, the market was pretty happy to see that a trade truce has been agreed, certainly. That has been hanging over markets for some time, particularly following the escalation about a month ago between, Trump and Xi in terms of some pretty nasty rhetoric around putting in a 100% trade tariff on Chinese imports into the US, for example. So the resolution, or at least the temporary sort of step back in terms of the level of trade tension between those two countries is perceived well. However, we are still probably a bit light in terms of the details, and it may still only be a temporary agreement rather than something that's kind of years ongoing. So we need to see more details around that. But for now, the markets are taking that relatively calmly and as a piece of good news.
Yeah, we always have to be cautious about getting ahead of ourselves, right? The proof is in the pudding when they need to sign that off. Thank you for the update, Forsyth Bar investment strategist Zoe Wallace. Now, coming up next, it was a busy weekend in sport. It was also a busy weekend of celebrations in Otahu. The boys from Sport Desk are going to be in next to tell us all about it. And then after 8, we're going to head to the UK for the latest on the continuing fallout from the Andrew Mountbatten Windsor story. It's so weird not calling him Prince Andrew, but the former prince. What is next for him, and is there more to come? We will find out. Right now, it is 6 minutes to 8. We'll be back after this.
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life, I was a chef. Did that for 25 years. But I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time. And so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
Oh, no lemming tech solutions experts.
Here to set up your new smart TV.
Oh, goody. We're a family of 4, so we need it done perfect. Too high. Too low. Just right.
Of course, we can assess your Wi-Fi network and run a speed test. And now check out these features. This is how you get to streaming.
We love streams.
Nobody has supreme knowledge of home TV setup like Noel Leeming.
Maximising productivity, what have you got?
Well, if we switch to 2 degrees, with Flex for Business, we can instantly manage data usage, employee mobile plans, and cost centre reporting, saving us time and money. Cool. I'll get onto that then.
I became a Herald journalist to go behind the headlines and to help people make sense of the world.
I became a Herald journalist to help people understand the big issues that affect them.
To ask the right questions and to press people who have the answers.
To listen to people and to be fair and balanced.
To highlight the plight of the marginalised and vulnerable and challenge those in authority.
To share extraordinary moments in the lives of ordinary people.
I became a Herald journalist to report the facts. That's what we're here to do.
If it's news you can trust, it's news worth knowing. The New Zealand Herald.
You are with Herald Now. It is 3 minutes to 8. The boys are here, so it is time to talk sport. And joining me are Herald sports reporters Chris Reeve and Alex Powell. Chris, we have heard Dame Nolene speak for the first time since this whole saga emerged. Are we any clearer as to what went on?
No, not really. If anything, we're a little bit more confused. She's been doing the media rounds this morning. She's talking to Mike Hosking on the radio, and she basically said she's not even sure why she got stood down. So yeah, that feeds a lot of questions. And she was asked, "Is that just something you're not allowed to talk about?" And she said, "No, I don't know." So
And
yeah,
if
a little bit of
she
confusion.
doesn't know, how is anyone else supposed to know? Does that give us confidence that things are resolved within the camp? Surely not.
No, the fact she's not going over to the UK for the end of year tour is a pretty big red flag to me. The fact that we still don't know what's gone on, that now we know that she doesn't know what's gone on, it just doesn't leave a very good taste in the mouth.
And I guess we have been told to date that no heads will roll, but surely we have to get to a point where someone has to take the fall for this giant mismanagement.
It does seem a little bit like that, you know, it just seems to have been a whole kerfuffle, a whole confusing sort of process that no one seems to know what's gone on, no one seems to know why, and it's all just been a very strange and Dame Nolene said horrific experience. So hearing the head coach of the Silver Ferns say something like that about the process, yeah, like Alex said, it doesn't fill anyone with confidence.
Let's talk about the ABs. Chris, what did you make of what was this middling start and then the bench comes on and 3 tries in the last quarter? What are we to make of that?
Yeah, it was a strange game. The first sort of 5 minutes, you have 2 Barretts go down, one of them have to go off, the other one probably should have gone off. I would have assumed, you know, the Irish player got a red card for, you know, taking him out via the head. I would have thought that was a HIA, but I guess not. He was fine to go. And then, yeah, sort of very stop-start. It wasn't like a particularly great first half. It was a long first half. And then, like you say, the bench came on. They got a roll on. They started looking really good, playing well, and yeah, they just rolled over the top of them in the end, which was pretty positive. The sort of second half has been a little bit of an issue for them this year, sort of coming out of half-time, getting the bench really rolling. So that was a really good sign against a tough Irish team.
Alex, what do you think, what sort of position does this put us in heading into playing the Scots?
Scotland's a tricky one. Like, they are such an improved side from what Kiwis might be used to. They've got 1 to 15. They do have match winners. So to go in there, I think to get confidence from winning ugly, it just does such good things for a team. So to have that...
Winning ugly.
So I think they're in a very good position. They'll think they're in a good position, but they'll also know the challenge that's in front of them.
Let's talk about cricket, Alex. Kane Williamson stepping down from the T20 version of the game, still playing the other versions of the game. I mean, he's been such a pivotal player.
Yeah.
This is quite big news.
It is. So I've actually been looking at this for a couple of months now about sort of questioning where does he fit in. The modern T20 game is basically just baseball. You need guys who are going to hit it from ball one, and that's never been Kane Williamson. So for him to make the call, like he did an interview a couple of weeks ago before the start of the one-dayers against England and said he's looking forward to the 2027 World Cup and playing Test cricket, and didn't make any mention of T20. So once you heard that, it's like, okay, well, surely he's going to make a call here. And it sounds like he's made that call before it was made for him.
Right, okay. So, and when you have been that pivotal to the game, good to be able to make your own calls and jump rather than be pushed, right?
Yeah, he's absolutely earned the right to decide how he wants to finish his career. Like, he's only got a couple of years left at most, you'd think. And he's already given so much to this team. Like, he's been in there since he was 20. He's now 35. He owns just about every batting record we've got. Records that are probably never going to be broken either. So if this is how he wants to finish them, so be it.
Yeah, good on him. Chris, let's talk about the league. Even though the Kiwis beat Tonga, they had that incredible party down south. Do we love league again?
Oh, we've always loved league. We're a country of league supporters. The international game has just not really been a priority in sort of the wider context of league, because the NRL sort of dictates everything. But when you got a competition like this, you get to see the full support now that, you know, more NRL players are playing for sort of Tonga and Samoa. You're seeing stronger teams, more competition, a little bit more to give the fans something to sort of cheer on. Obviously, the Tongans haven't gone particularly well in this competition. They were beaten pretty soundly again by the Kiwis, who are looking very good, and yeah, punched their way into the final of the competition. And it's good to see so much support for a competition that doesn't feature the Australians. That's another big thing, because they're the superstars of the game.
Yes, yeah. Big weekend of sport. Thank you both for your time helping us chew through it. Chris Reeve and Alex Powell, Herald sports journalists. It is 2 minutes past 8. It is time for the news with Neva. welcome to Herald Now. I'm Nadine Higgins and it is Monday the 3rd of November. Coming up on the show today, a Prince no more. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has had his title removed, but what next for the royal family and where to now for the man formerly known as a prince? Royal biographer Andrew Lowney joins me in 5 minutes and we will ask him. The PM has just arrived home from his trip to Asia. He met the two most powerful men on the planet. But what will it all translate into for us? We'll ask our panel and get them to break down Luxon's wins and losses. And half of all ambulance call-outs in New Zealand are for people aged over 65. Hatuhone St John has launched a new plan to keep older Kiwis safe, what they reckon we should be doing differently. Plus, Dame Nolene Tauroa on what she calls the horrific process of being stood down by Netball New Zealand. We're going to speak to Dame Knowles after 8:30. But first, now here really is the news with Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
The government says planning is underway to staff 140 new hospital beds across 5 hospitals. Health Minister Simeon Brown has announced new wards at Middlemore, Waikato, Wellington and Nelson hospitals, in addition to an already announced new ward at Hawke's Bay Hospital. The wards will be constructed off-site and then installed at the hospitals. Brown says each ward will be slightly different.
In Middlemore, it'll be helping to improve the flow through the hospital. In Waikato, it'll be more around the diagnostics, but attached to the emergency department.
More schools are introducing enrolment zones to manage growing student numbers. New Ministry of Education data shows more than 1,300 schools now have zoning schemes, more than twice as many as 2 decades ago. In Canterbury and Auckland, schools without zones have dropped by about a third in 5 years. Ministry Operations Leader Sean Teddy says zones prevent overcrowding and guarantee local students a place. He says families still have options if they want to attend a different school, including applying out of zone or considering private, charter or home-based education. Concerns about further measles transmission as more cases are linked to schools. There are now 17 active cases. 1 in Northland, 5 in Auckland, 1 in Taranaki, 2 in Manawatu, 6 in Wellington and 1 in Nelson. Some of the cases are linked to Wellington Girls College and Auckland Grammar School. Auckland University public health expert Michael Baker says it's a recipe for more spread.
If you're not immune and you spent a day in a classroom with someone else who was actively infectious, you're almost certainly going to get infected yourself.
Questions remain over the motivation behind a mass stabbing attack on board a train in the UK. 2 British men have been held on suspicion of attempted murder following the Saturday night attack, which forced the London-bound train to make an emergency stop in Huntingdon. 9 people suffered life-threatening injuries and 2 remain in a critical condition. Police don't believe it was a terrorist attack. Concerns a law cracking down on online harm is still only reaching the tip of the iceberg a decade on from its inception. The number of people with finalised charges under the Harmful Digital Communications Act has jumped from 18 in the first year to 114 in the past year. The number convicted of the most serious offence has risen from 12 to 75. Auckland University criminologist Claire Meehan says the rise is expected as enforcement becomes less cautious and awareness grows.
But I think it's really important to note most of the offences, they aren't reported, they're not recorded and they're not prosecuted.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Kiwis coach Stacey Jones has saluted the Pacific Championships as an advertisement for International Rugby League after his side beat Tonga 40-14 at Eden Park. Wellington have drawn 1-1 away against the Central Coast in A-League football. Golfer Dame Lydia Kos finished in a share of 9th at the latest LPGA event in Malaysia. An anonymous TAB punter could net over $732,000 from tomorrow's Melbourne Cup via a 12-leg multi-bet in January if Buckaroo finishes in the top 3.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Morena, good morning. A fine looking day for most of us. Well away to start the week. High pressure very much in control of our weather this morning, which keeps most of us fine and dry, and with some pretty warm temperatures as well, especially down here in the south. 21 degrees Celsius in Invercargill. That's normally what we see this time of year in places like Kerry. Generally a fine, dry, sunny story right the way up through Otago, up into towards Canterbury, Marlborough, Tasman. Even on that western coast it stays dry, just a touch more cloud in places like Westport as we head through the afternoon. We'll find some cloudier skies, especially towards Taranaki and around in towards the likes of the Kapiti coast later in the day. But even here, plenty of sunshine, fine, dry, sunny story up this eastern coast as well. Areas of cloud bubbling up over the higher ground of Taupo, but generally a good-looking day here too. As we head northwards, we'll meet some cloud running in from the top of the country and towards parts of Northland later in the day, but still plenty of sunshine as we head through the rest of Monday.
It is 8:09 and you're with Herald Now. Falls are one of the biggest causes of injury and hospitalisation among older New Zealanders, and for many, a single fall can mean not only the loss of confidence, but independence and sometimes life. Hato Hone St John has launched a new falls prevention and response strategy to help people stay safe in their homes for longer. Clinical Director Dr John Moores joins us now to explain how it works. Kia ora, good morning to you. Can you talk us through this strategy? How are you going to prevent so many falls happening to older New Zealanders in their homes?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. We go to about 2,800 falls patients every month. And I guess we see firsthand the impact that falls have on people in terms of the initial impact of trauma and separation, or perhaps being able to return to their home environment. But we're really keen with the clinical skills personnel that we have, but also our links out to the wider health system, other agencies, to ensure that we offer a really joined up setup so that when somebody has a fall, we can look at things like referral, strength and balance classes, other options to ensure that people stay well and in their homes for longer.
Obviously, this is about keeping New Zealanders safe and healthy and in their homes. But do you also need this to happen to take a bit of a pressure off the ambulance service?
Yeah, look, I think absolutely. I mean, you know, there's the pressure conversation. I think there's also the wider impact on the health system. We know that 1 in 3 of every New Zealander over the age of 65 will have a fall, 1 in 2 over the age of 80. So it's a significant impact, not only for us, but also the wider health system. And we're really keen not to cart Nana off to hospital every time she has a fall, but make sure that she's got the right care and that she's connected to the right option. So we see our role not necessarily in the traditional ambulance sense of driving somebody to hospital, but really looking at those good referral options. And if we can do that, that'll help reduce demand for us and also the wider health system.
Is it also about those who know and love those older people intervening and saying, hey, we need to get some preventative stuff in place? Because older New Zealanders might not necessarily acknowledge the risk themselves and not want to be mollycoddled, I suppose.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's definitely a whānau approach. So I think, you know, wrapping support around your nana or your pop, getting involved as well, thinking a bit about environment, thinking a bit about strength and balance. If you're a young person, go off to the strength and balance class with your nan, have a bit of fun, encourage her, because this is something that's going to keep her on her feet for longer. There's some fantastic things that the whole family can get involved in. If you haven't downloaded the Nimble app from ACC, go and grab it. You know, that's something that I do with my parents. We sit on the sofa and we have a crack at the Nimble app on a Friday evening. It can be good fun. So make it less about, you know, compliance, sort of the worst case scenario, and more of a family integrated opportunity to have a bit of fun and wrap around some support.
So this is a 10-year strategy. How are you going to measure its effectiveness, its success?
Yeah, look, I guess the first thing we're going to look at is obviously we want to see more patients referred into referral pathways. So we'll look at where we've made really good connections to other agencies. So that's a really good opportunity for us to challenge ourselves to partner more with agencies like Age Concern, ACC, Osteoporosis New Zealand, and make sure that we've got good links. So definitely talking to them as well to see how effective we are. You can look at number of patients transported as one very crude measure, but I think think it's really about the patient's experience, their awareness of strength and balance, and whether we've used those pathways actively to keep them out of the emergency department.
Look, I know this is a really serious issue, but on a slightly lighter note, at what age does it go from falling over to being termed having a fall?
Yeah. Look. I thought about this the other day because I was walking to a meeting and I slipped on some coffee and went over and I thought, man, I've just hit 50 and was that a fall? But I sat down with a Nimble app and had a crack to sort of see what my risk factors were and how I'd respond. Look, I think we know that patients over the age of 65, it's the most significant cause of trauma. It has the most significant impact in terms of people's ability to stay in the home. But certainly once you're hitting that 65, the risks of wider harm increase. But hey, look, if you're hitting your 50s, a bit of strength-based exercise gets you prepared and ready to go for that next step.
Oh gosh, people will be saying 50s. Does that mean I'm old? Hatuahone St John's Clinical Director, Dr. John Moores. Thank you so much for your time this morning and all of the best implementing that new strategy. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon has returned from brushing shoulders with the world's biggest leaders at the APEC summit over the weekend, and he spoke with News Talk ZB's Mike Hosking this morning, who asked him if the summit was a great success.
I think it was a great success. We transacted some business with Malaysia, which is, I'd been there on a state visit. We upgraded our relationship with the ASEAN countries. We're only 7 countries that have that level of standard, which just means more investment, more exports. APEC was good to see where 70% of our exports go to those 21 economies that are represented there. And then we had some very good sort of bilateral engagements with leaders, and we upgraded the relationship with Korea as well, which is one of the top 10 economies in the world. So all of that's just designed to create opportunity for New Zealand businesses. That's all I can do is create the conditions for growth, and then it's up to businesses to come forward and go smash it.
It was a smart thing to do to invite Trump to play golf. Do you think it's possible he may well one day do that?
Yeah, I reckon it could be. Yeah, I mean, he knew a lot about the golf assets that are here in New Zealand. The golf courses, he'd heard about them. They generally are in the top 10, 15 in the world. And if he's going to come down to Australia and New Zealand and this part of the world, then we should certainly welcome him here.
Yeah, the problem with your recommendation, Tariti, was it's a links course.
Yes,
and he likes a nice, nicely manicured PGA type course.
We can find something if there's enough good courses here. But that was good. That was a good meeting because he had very formal meetings with China and Korea, and then he met with us just informally or me personally, which was great. So he was very good.
Okay, the announcement this morning: the Chinese tourists say no longer need to do all the paperwork the way they used to if they come through Australia. Would you have liked to have done more? Because unless they do come through Australia, they've still got the same problems.
Well, no, actually, back in June when I did the visit, we did a few things. One is we got rid of a whole bunch of complexity and actually cost that they have around getting all their applications translated and certified and all those sorts of things. I think we're now processing Chinese visas in less than 4 or 5 days from memory. The second thing we did is we said, look, if you're transiting through New Zealand, we can have a lot more flexibility there, which has been great because there is new services that are coming on stream between China and South America through Auckland, which is really good. And the third thing is recognising that a large proportion of the Chinese visitors actually do to Australia and New Zealand in one trip. And if the Australians are actually saying, look, you're good with a work, travel or visitor visa, then actually why would we want to reduplicate all of that work? It's good enough for us too. So feel free to come over to New Zealand for 3 months. Okay, and then we also have that 5-year multiple entry visa in and out as well.
I don't know how up on this you were, but there's a lot of pushback last week on the education curriculum, and there was some concern, particularly because the full curriculum got put out for years 1 to 10, and a lot of teachers, educators, unionists, etc. I can't work it out whether they just complain for the sake of complaining because they don't like change, or they've got a genuine point. They seem to be indicating that some of the expectation around some of the things that kids will learn at a certain age is too complicated. It's too difficult. So are they dumbing us down, or have you missed the boat here?
I feel very strongly about this, Mike. There's nothing more important for our future success in the next 20 years than getting our kids educated. There is a stack of high-paying jobs out there in the world, and we need them to come to New Zealand. And what's been happening is actually our standards have been slipping versus lots of other countries. We actually had over half our kids not at school regularly. We have half not where they need to be at on reading. 80% not where they need to be at on maths when they get into high school. And I don't remember the unions actually going after Chris Hipkins when he was Education Minister for 6 years and saying, hey, listen, we've got a dumbing down of the standards. We're actually underachieving and not doing a service by our kids. I'm not having Kiwi kids lose to kids in Singapore, Ireland, Canada, New South Wales, wherever. And so we are strengthening the curriculum from year 1 to 10 because that's the single biggest thing that we can do to set ourselves up for future. So, the unions, there's a consultation period. Be constructive. Don't be political. Get in behind. But where were you when the last 6 years calling out the poor performance?
And that was Prime Minister Christopher Luxon speaking on ZB this morning after landing back from APEC. You may have seen that Nolene Taurua has been in the news this morning speaking about this disastrous last 6 weeks of her career and saying that she actually doesn't know the details of why she was stood down, which is interesting given that she's now been reinstated and we're told that everything's wonderful and we'll get back to normal. So we're going to ask our panel about that very shortly and chat to them about some of the other big issues of the day. Simon Bridges and Deborah Peed join me at the desk after the break.
When building for investment, it's important to find a team that you can trust.
We decided to build the GGs because they're good quality that they always provide us.
They've helped us throughout the whole process of getting the resource consent to the building consent, and their contracts are very easy to understand. We have built 4 houses with GJ Gardeners, and it's just easier every time we work with them.
I'll definitely recommend GJs to all of my friends and family.
If you're thinking of building, choose the builder you'll want to build with time and time again.
I became a Herald to get the truth.
I became a Herald journalist to share not only what's going on, but also what it means.
To help people make up their own minds about the issues that matter.
To give a voice to every New Zealander and to expose the issues affecting our communities.
To make sure that people that are in positions of power are held to account.
To enact change that will ultimately benefit all of society.
To take our readers closer to the action.
I became a Herald journalist to put the facts first. That's the reason we're here.
If it's news you can trust, it's news worth knowing. The New Zealand Herald.
You Do It delivers high-quality New Zealand-made flat-pack DIY kitchen cabinetry. With flexible widths at your fingertips, it makes designing easy. All at an affordable price because you order online and cut out the middleman. You can even upgrade your dream kitchen with You Do It stylish and clever options, like choosing wall cabinets with overhanging doors, or select from a range of pull-out storage solutions. Add premium soft-close drawers and ask to stretch the height, width or depth of your cabinets. Upgrade your kitchen today and head to newsroom.co.nz.
Term deposit rates are falling, but your returns shouldn't. Speak to a Foresight Bar investment advisor about alternative strategies, their benefits and risks, and how they can help you meet your investment goals. Foresight Bar, investment advice.
Welcome back. You're with Herald Now. It is 8:21. A prince no more. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is how the Queen's second son will now be known, having been stripped of his royal title. His royal status has steadily eroded amid years of scandal and backlash, but now the move to remove his title signals a clear effort by the palace to distance itself once and for all. Royal biographer Andrew Lowney is here to discuss what this means for the royal family and for former Prince Andrew's place within it. Good morning to you from New Zealand. Good evening for you. This is quite the extraordinary step, but do you think it's enough and soon enough to actually draw a line under it, or is the public still baying for blood and for more to happen?
Yes, I'm afraid that the public are baying for more blood. I think if they had done this much sooner, even 2 weeks ago when they issued the first statement, the problem wouldn't have expanded. But we've now got lots of questions being asked about royal accountability and privilege. Questions asked about their wealth, and more information has come out in the papers today about some of the financial affairs of both Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. I think the feeling is that and people pressing for them to be investigated by the law enforcement, charged, and if necessary, he should be convicted. The royal family have distanced themselves. They clearly see what is happening. He's on his own now. And I think that it is more likely that law enforcement who have looked at him in the past will do so again, both in terms of his sex trafficking with Virginia Giuffre, but also the financial corruption that occurred when he was the trade envoy between 2001 and 2011.
Right, so there's definitely more to come here. Is he really on his own, though? Because he'll still be staying at Sandringham, he'll be getting money from his brother, or is he really going to be an outcast?
I think he's pretty much an outcast. He's on one of the properties on the Sandringham estate, not on the big house. I mean, he'll be there with probably a housekeeper and a cook. I mean, I don't think he could survive otherwise, but it's a big climb down from a 30-room mansion with extensive staff. You know, he's been very publicly humiliated. Everything has now been stripped from him. He's now lost his Vice Admiral, Honorary Vice Admiral of the Navy, and other things. And as I say, people are now calling for him to be investigated, included the former head of Royal Security and the former head of the prosecution service here. So he's in big trouble, and I think this is why the royal family have basically left him to dangle on his own.
What about Fergie? She's been living with him until now, but I'm told she won't be going with him, so what will become of her?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm sure she's a great comeback kid, but clearly Andrew is no longer so attractive. He's no longer a prince and living in Royal Lodge. She's just sold a house for £4 million. I mean, she has money. Her daughters have several houses and lots of room for a granny flat. So I think she's not going to be homeless. But I think the suggestion is she may perhaps keep some base in Britain, but actually move to Switzerland, which she looked at doing several years ago as a tax exile. But anyway, this is the end of the happiest divorced couple ever, I think.
Well, she's not renowned for managing her money all that well, though, right? So there might be more headlines to come about how she chooses to make it. Just finally, Andrew, do you think that this would have happened, the stripping of the titles, the moving out of Royal Lodge, if the Queen was still alive?
No, I think that probably wouldn't have happened. I think we also have a different set of circumstances. We've had the steady trickle of, I suppose, allegations against them. I mean, all backed up, starting with my book in August, but also many disclosures, and for example, the Mail on Sunday here and the Daily Telegraph, with the leaks from the Epstein files. We've had Virginia Giuffre's own book last week, which I think was the tipping point. But the king is being heckled here. There is extensive coverage in the media here about perhaps even the end of the monarchy and certainly the need for it to reform. So they had to do something. I don't think they've done enough. And this story has a long way still to run.
The book you mentioned that you penned over 4 years of research is entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, and I think I'm going to put it on the book club wish list. Sounds like important reading. Thank you so much for your time, Andrew Lowney, royal biographer. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about the big issues of the day with our daily panel, including that story with Simon Bridges, Auckland Business Chamber CEO, and Deborah Peed, founder of Peed PR. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Nadine.
I want to talk to you about Dame Nolene, but let's start, given we've just been talking about the Royals. Do you think they've done enough, Deborah? I mean, you would probably agree that the PR of this has been handled appallingly.
Yeah. Look, this has been like the longest running sitcom ever, and unlike the Kardashians, this doesn't end with a TV series. It goes on and on and on. But this is the royal family since Henry VIII. You know, it's been these ups and downs, and yet despite their appalling behaviour, we're still fascinated by them. But have they handled this one well? Well, it's about time that he was stripped of those titles, because the lack of respect that he's shown his title, the entitlement, which I believe is the title of that book, but the shame he's brought on the family and his abuse of the public purse has just been shocking. So it's about time that he's got his comeuppance.
Simon, does it prompt revisiting what the royals actually mean, and do we still put so much store in the royal family from down here in New Zealand?
Maybe not, but I mean, I agree. Firstly, you know, I don't think even Deborah could save, I was going to say Prince Andrew, but Andrew. I mean, this guy is, you know, the headlines are unbelievable. I agree it's a sitcom. I mean, I think at one level we will remain exceptionally interested in this. I mean, it is just so fascinating. I don't know what we'd fill the Herald with. And have kind of these stories at one level. My personal view is, like, is the monarchy still important? Like, at a level, yes, I'm a reluctant monarchist. I say that because it's cheap for us. And it means we don't get an elected president, which I think would come with its own thing. So what am I saying? It's interesting. I don't know that it affects our daily lives, but I think we'll remain a monarchy personally into the sort of foreseeable future.
I think we could fill the New Zealand Herald without the headlines. Whether the Woman's Day could cope without
No,
those headlines.
They certainly couldn't.
They could not.
But the monarchy is still important in the UK, and especially with older population groups. They poll very highly. I think 85% of over 65s still support the monarchy. Not so much that's losing its significance with younger groups, but it's more than just a status symbol. I think a lot of British people's identity is wrapped up in the monarchy, and so it does play a significant role. And at the end of it, it is at the crux of it all, I should say, it's a family. There's a family there, so we can't lose sight of that. They're not just there for our amusement.
And an amazing economic generator, if you like, and soft power for that country. I mean, who does Trump want to see when he goes? He wants all that pomp and ceremony.
He does. He revelled in it
yeah,
when he was there.
Because it's kind of like something that no other nation on earth does quite so. In some ways badly, but in some senses so well.
How did you rate Luxon on his most recent trip? He seemed to, you know, what was it Trump said? I like your man. I've got a terrible American accent. I like your man from New Zealand.
I liked it. I think excellent. And, you know, we were just talking about it off here. I think there's a sense now, you know, if you went back a decade, this stuff wasn't quite so important, but we're in such kind of topsy-turvy. I mean, to say uncertain is an understatement of the year, geopolitical times. This stuff really matters now. So I think how a leader of a country performs does matter. I think what we're seeing here is, you know, Prime Minister's building his connections. And so, as he said, I agree, the rapport factor with, say, a Trump, but also the new Japanese Prime Minister and so on, that really matters. I think he gets a very strong pass.
Yeah, and it's those soft skills that seem to really matter. As our political reporter was saying this morning, when things go wrong, they have to know who you are in order to pick up the phone and talk to you about it.
100%. Look, I mean, great photo opportunities, and he scrubs it well for good photos, but there's a great expression that if you're not at the lunch, you are the lunch. So he really needs to be around that table advocating for New Zealand, and I think he does that well. He sort of comes into his own on the negotiating table. So I like the fact he was there, and I love that he's still continuing to create a framework for New Zealand businesses to trade well and thrive. That's what we need.
We have to talk about Dame Nolene Tauroa because she's broken her silence after this palaver that stretched out over the last 6 weeks or so. Is it not extraordinary though, Simon, that she's actually saying, I don't know what the issue was?
It is extraordinary, and so, you know, consequently, I mean, I think we can both cop out a level and say, I don't claim to read the story. I don't really understand.
I don't know if anyone does.
Yeah,
if she doesn't, who does?
So that's massive caveat. I mean, one thing I would say, coming from, again, you know, the world people say is the brutalising world of politics. One thing I've learned in my little experiences with sports is sports politics is more brutal than anything in New Zealand. Yeah, I just think it's, maybe it's because we care about it more than conventional politics in New Zealand. It is brutal, and I think we're seeing that here and what's happened with her. And, you know, I say, don't know the rights and wrongs, but I think, Deborah, you know, your advice, just some first principles of how they knit it all back together now would be very interesting.
The reputational damage to Netball New Zealand through this is massive. And if they were a business, the shareholders should be asking a lot of questions. I have no doubt that sponsors are asking questions. And the board and the CEO have a lot to answer for with the way this has been handled and the way it's been played out. Let's not forget that Dame Nolene is a dame.
Yes.
And the lack of respect that's been shown her. I heard her on air this morning. She doesn't even know why she was stood down. So what they need now is like, let's get some sunlight into this, give some transparency, let's have some clarity, and let us know what you're doing to rebuild that culture. I mean, we all know that high-performance sport takes a lot of mental resilience. So what's gone wrong there? And where are the accusations? And they're going to have to demonstrate that they can get their house back in order to keep the support of the public and also to keep the support of sponsors.
Absolutely, because if you don't know what's gone wrong, how on earth are you supposed to put it right? It just boggles the mind.
Yes, and winning a few games would also help.
It would, it would. Just on a lighter note, I don't know if you follow Heidi Klum, but she puts in the most effort into a Halloween costume I have ever seen. I hope we've got some pictures to show you, because she's known for being, you know, very beautiful, but she's gone to the other extreme for Halloween. Let's see, here we go. So she is Medusa, and she has, I think the snakes actually move. Her husband is a man she's turned to stone. They spent 10 hours putting together her look. She does not do things by halves.
I mean,
what do you think?
That is massive commitment to Halloween. I mean, you know, I find it hard getting dressed up to go out for a show, let alone doing something like that. But that is massive, and congratulations to her. She's the queen of Halloween, clearly.
And I was going to say, is it all worth it? I mean, I suppose in her case it is. She's gone around the globe. Everyone's talking about it. She did a lot better than, who was it? Is it Julie Fox with the Kennedy one? I don't know if you saw that. That didn't go so well. So she's made a sensation. Julie Fox, who was doing Jackie Kennedy, I think. That was a fail.
Well, I had a wild thing and a pea in my household. So the tiniest one was a pea, and he was not into it.
A pea?
a pea in a pod. Yeah, and he screamed blue murder.
That sounds more cute than scary. Just saying.
No, we didn't go for scary. We 100% went for cute. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on the panel this morning, Simon Bridges and Deborah Peed. It is 8:34. Time for a break. We'll be back right after this.
Herald NOW News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
The government says planning is underway to staff 140 new hospital beds across 5 hospitals. Health Minister Simeon Brown has announced new wards at Middlemore, Waikato, Wellington and Nelson hospitals, in addition to an already announced new ward at Hawke's Bay Hospital. The wards will be constructed off-site and then installed at the hospitals. Brown says each ward will be slightly different.
In Middlemore, it'll be helping to improve the flow through the hospital. In Waikato, it'll be more around the diagnostics, but attached to the emergency department.
More schools are introducing enrolment zones to manage growing student numbers. New Ministry of Education data shows more than 1,300 schools now have zoning schemes, more than twice as many as 2 decades ago. In Canterbury and Auckland, schools without zones have dropped by about a third in 5 years. Ministry Operations Leader Sean Teddy says zones prevent overcrowding and guarantee local students a place. He says families still have options if they want to attend a different school, including applying out of zone or considering private, charter or home-based education. Concerns about further measles transmission as more cases are linked to schools. There are now 17 active cases. 1 in Northland, 5 in Auckland, 1 in Taranaki, 2 in Manawatu, 6 in Wellington and 1 in Nelson. Some of the cases are linked to Wellington Girls College and Auckland Grammar School. Auckland University public health expert Michael Baker says it's a recipe for more spread.
If you're not immune and you spent a day in a classroom with someone else who was actively infectious, you're almost certainly going to get infected yourself.
Questions remain over the motivation behind a mass stabbing attack on board a train in the UK. 2 British men have been held on suspicion of attempted murder following the Saturday night attack, which forced the London-bound train to make an emergency stop in Huntingdon. 9 people suffered life-threatening injuries and 2 remain in a critical condition. Police don't believe it was a terrorist attack. Concerns a law cracking down on online harm is still only reaching the tip of the iceberg a decade on from its inception. The number of people with finalised charges under the Harmful Digital Communications Act has jumped from 18 in the first year to 114 in the past year. The number convicted of the most serious offence has risen from 12 to 75. Auckland University criminologist Claire Meehan says the rise is expected as enforcement becomes less cautious and awareness grows.
But I think it's really important to note most of the offences, they aren't reported, they're not recorded and they're not prosecuted.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Morena, good morning. A fine looking day for most of us, well away to start the week. High pressure very much in control of our weather this morning, which keeps most of us fine and dry, and with some pretty warm temperatures as well, especially down here in the south. 21 degrees Celsius in Invercargill. That's normally what we see this time of year in places like Kerikeri. Generally a fine, dry, sunny story right the way up through Otago, up into towards Canterbury, Marlborough, Tasman. Even on that western coast it stays dry, just a touch more cloud in places like Westport as we head through the afternoon. We'll find some cloudier skies, especially towards Taranaki and around in towards the likes of the Kapiti coast later in the day. But even here, plenty of sunshine, fine, dry, sunny story up this eastern coast as well. Areas of cloud bubbling up over the higher ground of Taupo, but generally a good looking day here too. As we head northwards, we'll meet some cloud running from the top of the country and towards parts of Northland later in the day, but still plenty of sunshine as we head through the rest of Monday.
It is 8:38. Each week we have been checking in with a mayor around the country to find out what is going on in their community. And today is a doozy. We are heading to the far north to catch up with Moko Te Pānea. He was voted New Zealand's most popular mayor in March and secured re-election by a landslide. So I guess he must be doing something right, and perhaps the rest of us should take notes. Moko Te Pānea, kia ora, good morning.
Hey, morena tohine, morena Nadine.
It's so great to be talking to you, New Zealand's most popular mayor. What are you doing so right?
Oh, I don't know about that, right? Doing something right though, because got voted back in by the people. But I guess it's just being yourself, right? Being authentic and just genuinely wanting to do better for the people of the far north. So I don't know, it's a tough gig, and my heart goes out to my mates that didn't make it back in throughout the election. Elections can be pretty grueling, right? And I always feel like everyone's got the right heart and the right mind in the mahi, but I'm very appreciative to the people of the far north for giving me another go.
Is part of it perhaps managing to deliver rates rises less than you were expecting to? People always appreciate a little less pain in the pocket.
Oh, I think so. I mean, our cumulative increase over the 3 years I was mayor last time was around 23%. I think we're in the lowest 20 councils for rates increases. But that was a unique story that got us to where we were. Otherwise would be back with almost every other council in the country with those significant double-digit rises. But our people up here, I mean, we're in the lower end of the socioeconomic index, right? So we know that affordability is a huge thing. And we just managed to pull some rabbits out of hats up here to keep our rates low.
What are you doing for community engagement? Because when it comes to local body politics, people notoriously are disengaged and aren't turning up to, well, post their ballot. So what are you doing to keep people engaged?
Oh, this was the challenge that we put on our chief executive through this election. In a general election, the far north has 78 places you can go and vote. In a local election, it's usually just our 6 service centres, so that's a significant decrease, right? But this year, council hired camper vans and went out to almost every single settlement, every rural valley, every beach that they could go to drive up that increase. And I think we saw an increase from 42% to 50.7%, so a real success story there. But it's about, leaving the office and actually getting out to the people.
Yeah, I'm so pleased to hear that that worked. As I said, you won by a landslide, but you've already said you're not going to stand again. Why not? What are you planning to do?
Oh, this is for me. I mean, I've spent 3 years as a councillor and another 3 years as mayor. At the end of this term, that'll be 9 years, 3 terms that I've given to the people of the far north in council. But I'm very much looking forward to having some free time at the end of this 3 years to give back to my whānau, give back to my marae. I finished my master's while I was mayor, actually, and I did it in maramataka and education, how we can use the Māori lunar calendar to accelerate learning te reo Māori. I haven't had any time to actually give back all of that mātauranga to my people or to the wider whānau. So that's the goal. The next 3 years, though, it's definitely being the best mayor that I can be.
Oh, and I think it sounds like with that Masters, you've got so much still to give the community, but perhaps just in other ways. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Moko Te Pāngia, the Far North District Mayor. Now, time for an update on all things rural. Riley Kennedy is a Business Desk senior journalist, and he is with us at the Herald NOW desk this morning. Good morning to you, Riley.
Very good morning.
So I hear we have passed peak milk.
Yeah, so the winter months, we sort of carve in winter and then we ramp up into October, which is our peak production month. So if you're driving around, say, mid-Canterbury or a dairy producing region, you'll notice a few more milk tankers out on the road. That's because they're rushing around collecting all of our milk. So we're past that. We're now 3 days past peak milk. To give you an idea of how much milk there is around, and around the winter months when these cows are dry and there's only winter milk, we're about 25 million kilograms of milk solids, and that ramped up to about 260 million in October. So we passed that. We don't know exactly how much milk there is around in that month, but I was talking to a dairy farmer this morning. I flicked him a quick text and said, how was peak month? And he said first half was down. First half was up actually, and then the second half was down. So it's a bit mixed. The real question will be what happened in Southland after that storm last month. I've heard that they're back to full capacity again, but there was a couple of weeks there, 10 days, where there would have been a bit of milk that had to be dumped just because tankers couldn't get into farms. So we'll find out exactly how much milk there was in peak milk at the end of the month. But going into September, collections were up about 3% across the country, which is good, but also there's just a lot more milk around, which is driving the dairy prices down around the world. So we've got the next GDT is on Tuesday night, tomorrow night, Wednesday morning. We'll find out what exactly that's done to the milk price. The last 5 auctions has declined.
But coming from a very high price.
Very
right?
high price.
So
I looked at the NZX milk price calculator. It's about sitting around $9.90 after 5 declines. So I'm sure Fonterra will be loath to cut the milk price below 10, but it is looking like it might slip a bit. Most economists are around 9.75, so it's still high, still very high, but it's just not as high as what it was this
Let's
time
talk
last
about the wool industry, a bit of consolidation there.
Yeah, so we've basically got 2 competitors saying that they're going to work together. The wool industry has struggled for a long time as it deals with synthetics and stuff like that, and so that's just led to a bit of an overcapacity in the logistics sector. So Wools of New Zealand and PGG Wrightsons have said, well, we need to work together. We need to look at, there's wool stores all over the country, so they're going to look at ways to optimise their asset utilisation, because nobody wants to have empty stainless steel sitting around, so they've said, well, let's do something about it. The red meat industry could take a lesson off the wool industry, because as we know, there's too many red meat plants around, and the red meat industry have always said, oh, we need to work together, so perhaps they could all look at the wool industry
and what they're doing. And the China International Import Expo gets underway. You've been to this before. What's it all about?
Yeah, so if you're trying to get hold of one of the country's top CEOs this week, maybe just try again next week, because they're all probably in Shanghai. They probably all went up over the weekend. The CIIE is massive. It's just like beyond comprehension. I referred to it as like the Shanghai Field Days, but or just on
Which sounds like a contradiction in terms, doesn't it? Shanghai and field days.
It's just on a completely another level. It's like going somewhere with, say, 5 Eden Parks. To give you an idea, it was about $130 billion worth of deals were cut at this one last year.
Wow.
And it's not even really a trade show. It's more about just turning up and being seen. So all of our but it's massive in Shanghai. You don't fully understand it until you get there.
Yeah. Thank you for your time this morning. That is Riley Kennedy, Business Desk Senior Journalist, with our rural update. Kiwi. Its founders want to hatch ambitious plans to use KiwiSaver money to own and run local water, power, other infrastructure. So can this InfraKiwi fly? I was joined by Garth Bray from Business Desk earlier in the morning, who had all the details. Yeah, I'm having a bit of trouble with my earpiece too, I think.
This proposition they have that if you could get KiwiSaver funding into it, to seed it at least, and then you'd probably stack some debt on top of that as well, because something like this could borrow, given that people pay their bills, they pay their power bills, they pay their water bills, so lenders are going to go, okay, we'll lend
There's
to
an
you
income stream, yes, you can have. Yep.
So they're talking about leveraging it probably 4 times whatever the KiwiSaver money is in there. But the idea being that the problem with that always is, oh, we're selling it offshore. We've seen it recently with the Fonterra brands debate and Winston Peters jumping into the chat on that. Anytime anything's for sale, anywhere in the world really, people say, who's going to own it and what does it mean for control and where the money goes ultimately, you know? So I guess that helps short-circuit that argument if you can get around the idea that it could be Kiwis owning Kiwis. Sam Stubbs, when I asked him about this, said he claims he's gone around the country for the last 2 years dropping this question into all of his presentations whenever he does it. How many of you would like the idea that your local power lines company or water company is owned a little bit by your KiwiSaver? And he reckons 90% of the hands go up in favour. So broad support, but like you say, who's going to sell it to them? Which council is going to be brave enough? They do think councils are a high prospect because we were reporting on Business Desk earlier this year that Standards & Poor's had downgraded 18 local bodies and their council-owned organisations because they had a higher credit risk, basically. They didn't like the fact that their debts were high, that their revenue was not looking that great. And you've got the government, of course, talking about capping rates. So this presents an alternative, I suppose, for some of those councils. They have just turned over lately. You know, you've got a lot of fresh faces, so whether the ones that have been elected rather than re-elected are keen on it as well. But we saw in those local body elections that a lot of mayors and people in places where the rates went up got dumped. So this might be really well timed.
There's a tension though, isn't it? Because your KiwiSavers are going to need to see a return on the investment, and those using the infrastructure don't want to pay over the odds for it. So it will be really interesting to see how they go.
Yes, it's a balance, all right. Yeah.
The ACC is headed to court over the issue of working from home, and I suspect that lots of people have had the call from their boss recently, like, back to the office.
Yeah.
What's the issue here?
This one's just dropped this morning. This is the PSA's put out a notice saying that it's the union for most of those public sector workers, 1,200 of them, I think, at the ACC, saying, we don't like the fact that you said you're going to have to go from 2 days a week in the office minimum to 3, kicking in about a month's time. They said they haven't had enough time to consult on this. You told us about it an hour before you pushed button on that, so that's not fair. We're going to have a crack. I guess this is highlighting, though, some interesting ideas that we've been covering on Business Desk recently around working from home.
Is it an entitlement or a perk?
Well, yeah, there's no legal right to it in law, but Section 6AA of the Employment Contracts Act says you can go to your employer and say, I'd like a variation, I'd like to vary it, I'd like to do some remote working, and there is like a legal obligation, a process for them to look at that seriously and run through it. Similar kind of thing works on the other side of the Tasman, where the Fair Work Commission in Australia recently pinged Westpac massively and gave a mother of 2 young kids the right to work from home for Westpac for 5 days a week because they didn't go through all the right processes to check, you know, what she was asking for and give her a proper response. So I guess, although the laws are different on either side of the Tasman, the idea is the same. If you're a boss, be very careful. If someone asks for this, make sure you've gone through all the steps to carefully evaluate it.
Even if you're always going to say no, make sure you go through the process.
It's got to be a thoughtful no. Yeah.
Now, the FMA is warning a few lawyers and accountants that they're playing a little bit fast and loose.
Yeah, this Financial Markets Authority, they regulate, you know, financial products and so on, and we unearthed this, actually, Maria Slade, property editor, has been taking a bit of a deep dive in there, and they found 22 accountants and 8 lawyers, we don't know their names or who they work for exactly, were apparently flagged by the FMA and reported to their professional bodies because of wholesale eligibility certificates. Now, these are basically bits of paper they sign off to say, my client is big enough, smart enough and rich enough to play ball by themselves in a less regulated investment market.
So they're not mum and dad, that horrible term for just the great unwashed investor. They're
you and
sophisticated.
Me. Well, yeah.
Supposedly.
Sophisticated implies the rest of us are unsophisticated. But like if it's a retail investment, if it's like putting money in a term deposit in the bank or whatever, there's always a big product disclosure statement around that. If it's a wholesale investment, it's sort of outside the fence. There's it's very lightly regulated. And the FMA went to court to try and work out whose responsibility. Should it be up to the scheme? And this is important because some of those big property investors, like the likes of your Wolfbrook Capital, Williams Corporation, E&O Property, and Duval and Black Robin particularly, were picked up by the FMA a couple of years ago and told you weren't using this quite right. The law on this, though, they took it to the court recently and said, hey, what's the story here? Who's responsible? Well, it's actually up to those lawyers, accountants and financial advisors to check that they're doing it right when they sign that bit of paper. FMA is saying, well, that's maybe not the best protection in the world. We're also a little bit worried, I suppose, that there's a bit of disagreement about what actually happened when they reported those advisors. It doesn't seem like an awful lot actually happened to them. So she's a pretty loose.
It's a really interesting issue because it's almost like you need your mum to sign your homework to say, yes, I am big enough and ugly enough to make my own decisions. Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing. These things are there so that people can take a bigger risk and, you know, on their own heads fall it. It's just, are you really, really ready for that? And that is Garth Bray from Business Desk speaking to me earlier this morning, thanks to our partners at 2 Degrees. There is a new biometric code tightening the rules around your information and how it's used. But what does it all mean? Chelsea Daniels from the Front Page podcast is looking into this today. What does it all mean?
Do you know what I mean? So, you look at, there's a new biometric code. It comes into force on November 3rd, which is today, obviously. Those companies who are already using it have until August next year. But you think about that and you think, what in the Mission Impossible is going on? Basically, so it's your facial recognition on the CCTV cameras and everything, retina scanning, fingerprints, the way someone walks is a part of their biometric code information. Yep. So, and you know, marketing, for instance, down the track could potentially pick up on whether somebody gets excited when they walk past a product. So this code is it's scary,
it
right?
goes deeper than I imagined.
And it is literally like Tom Cruise taking the mask off and putting another one on situation. So this is why the code is in place now. I spoke to Privacy Commissioner Michael Webster, who put together this code, and basically I said, look, what if I end up on one of those shoplifter lists? If I walk back in wearing a moustache and a wig or something, will it pick up on me? Here's what he said.
Some models of facial recognition technology, some biometric technology is that good. It comes back to a question about at what level do you set the accuracy reading. And one of the discussions we've had with New Zealand organisations is ensuring that you don't leave yourself at the risk of misidentification or incorrectly accusing somebody of being on a watch list when they're not, because that is incredibly harmful and damaging and upsetting for individuals. And so you want to be able to set the match, I guess, criteria quite high, and you want to be able to use a very reliable and good biometric technology product, software, that sort of thing.
It's an interesting area, isn't it? Because a lot of people say, well, nothing to hide, nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Exactly. What else did he have to say about this new code?
So he spoke about what biometric information actually is, how that data can be used. And an interesting part of the code is like, well, he said if you get your driver's license stolen, you can go down and get another driver's license. If you get your biometric information stolen, you can't just go and get new biometric information. That is basically you. And so the code makes sure that these companies have security in place so hackers can't get in and steal all of our biometric information. It's really interesting, so check it out.
Yeah, I will be. It is very interesting. Thank you, Chelsea. That is Chelsea Daniels, the host of the Front Page podcast with us this morning. Now, what a story it's been, a schmozzle. I can't think of a better word, but it really has been. Netball New Zealand dropped Dame Nolene Todor after allegations from some players of a psychologically unsafe environment after a mixture of confusion, silence, delay, more confusion, and eventually government intervention. She has now been reinstated. But on ZB this morning, Mike Hosking spoke with Dame Knowles in her first media interview since this whole saga began. Take a look.
Oh, look, hey, can I probably first start by thanking you on behalf of myself, the family, and actually the netball community for keeping the home fires burning, so to speak. But I'm elated to be back, and it feels like game day, if I'm going to be honest.
Good. Do you sit here this morning happy and vindicated, or is there more to it?
Look, I do sit here feeling happy. I don't take my role lightly. I feel I'm a guardian as a head coach, number 11, and I don't own it. So to some degree, I feel vindicated, and that was a necessary sort of statement that was included in the public statement by Netball New Zealand, but got a long way to go.
In what way?
One, I need to be on court. Looking forward to that, knowing that I have Commonwealth Games next year. So I've got to work through the opportunities that present in that way for me. And also what needs to be looked at moving forward for this team. I'm excited by getting back out on court when that opportunity does present, but also a bit of work to do behind the scenes as well.
The fact you're back but not back, are you happy about that?
Look, I'm back. It's probably the thing that I'm holding on to. And as I say, as a coach, my happy place is on court. It's training with the players, it's in team meetings, it's what I do, it's how I do it. And until I sort of really get back in my eyes, then there's still a bit to go. But I'm happy. It's been a long journey over the last 2 months, very horrific in my eyes. But, I've got to where I am, and I'm proud of that. I've been able to stand in my own truth, so to speak.
Just for the record, a lot of people texted us this question. Are you, as you speak to us this morning, constrained in any way in what you're able to say?
Yes, I am. I am constrained, mainly because of what's been signed, and I really want to honour that in regards to the integrity that I have, but also the balancing act, I suppose, that I have to be able to put my truth out there. So I'm in my conscious space. Never been so conscious in my life. But I don't want it to be the shortest reinstatement. I've had enough excitement over the last 2 months. But I also need to put my truth out there. So this is a balancing act that I'm prepared to walk.
Were you unfairly treated?
The process that I needed to go through when I was suspended or went through that was to then get lawyers involved. And through Minta Allison, who has actually helped me amazingly, they've been able to work through a process and negotiate with Netball New Zealand to be reinstated, hence me being here. Obviously, there are other options that could have been taken, which is a legal option. But to be honest, I didn't want to go there. That was my last option to do. It would have been positive, so to speak, for me because everything would have been laid out. But I'm also very aware about taxpayers' money. I'm aware about netball community money, and I know that we don't have a lot. So, that would have been my last grasp, but I'm really, really happy that my lawyers have been able to negotiate, and here I am.
In really simple terms, without relitigating the past, was it simply a case of some players didn't like the way you treated them, they complained, and that was the process?
In real simple terms, I don't know. And I can't tell you, and that's my truth. I'm not sort of going on the lines. I actually don't know. But I can tell you that I am 100% open. It's my 101, if I'm going to be honest, of listening to players, listening to anybody as to what concerns they have, and then looking for solutions to make it better. So that's just what I do and how I do it, and I haven't stopped that at all. And over my 25 years, that's what I'm synonymous with in regards to the culture and the environment that I build. So that's all I can say in that matter. But the question that you've asked, I don't know.
But when you say you don't know, when you sat down with the management of the board of Netball New Zealand and they were standing you down for what?
My truth is I don't know. So that's where my lawyers came to help in regards to negotiations and to find out what the truth and then to work through the process for me to come back. I was always adamant on my reinstatement, and that was my number one option, with number two going legal if we needed to. But I state once again that I am happy to listen to any concerns, put the solutions forward. But what I also want to stand in as well is that it's not environmental. I'm happy for individuals to tell the truth, and if anything, I encourage that. But there's some things, once again, if it's environmental or around the team, I'll stand strong on that because I know it's not.
My truth is I don't know why I was stood down. So are we any clearer as to the source of this whole palaver? I'm not sure that we are. That was Dame Nolene Taudoa speaking to ZB's Mike Hosking earlier this morning. And just a bit of news just to hand, TVNZ has confirmed that Simon Dello plans to stand down from reading the 6 p.m. news at the end of this month, which is a bit of an end of an era because he has spent nearly 2 decades as TVNZ's news anchor, originally alongside Wendy Petrie, of course, presenting significant events including the 2011 Christchurch earthquakes, the mosque attacks, the COVID pandemic, Cyclone Gabriel, and his replacement, no surprises, is the weekend presenter Melissa Stokes. She'll take over during the weekdays. And Simon did an awful lot of work training young presenters, including me, over the years. So go well, Simon Dello. It is 9:03, time for the news with Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
The government says planning is underway to staff 140 new hospital beds across 5 hospitals. Health Minister Simeon Brown has announced new wards at Middlemore, Waikato, Wellington and Nelson hospitals, in addition to an already announced new ward at Hawke's Bay Hospital. The wards will be constructed off-site and then installed at the hospitals. Brown says each ward will be slightly different.
In Middlemore, it'll be helping to improve the flow through the hospital. In Waikato, it'll be more around the diagnostics, but attached to the emergency department.
More schools are introducing enrolment zones to manage growing student numbers. New Ministry of Education data shows more than 1,300 schools now have zoning schemes, more than twice as many as 2 decades ago. In Canterbury and Auckland, schools without zones have dropped by about a third in 5 years. Ministry Operations Leader Sean Teddy says zones prevent overcrowding and guarantee local students a place. He says families still have options if they want to attend a different school, including applying out of zone or considering private, charter or home-based education. Concerns about further measles transmission as more cases are linked to schools. There are now 17 active cases. 1 in Northland, 5 in Auckland, 1 in Taranaki, 2 in Manawatu, 6 in Wellington and 1 in Nelson. Some of the cases are linked to Wellington Girls College and Auckland Grammar School. Auckland University public health expert Michael Baker says it's a recipe for more spread.
If you're not immune and you spent a day in a classroom with someone else who was actively infectious, you're almost certainly going to get infected yourself.
Questions remain over the motivation behind a mass stabbing attack on board a train in the UK. 2 British men have been held on suspicion of attempted murder following the Saturday night attack, which forced the London-bound train to make an emergency stop in Huntingdon. 9 people suffered life-threatening injuries and 2 remain in a critical condition. Police don't believe it was a terrorist attack. Concerns a law cracking down on online harm is still only reaching the tip of the iceberg a decade on from its inception. The number of people with finalised charges under the Harmful Digital Communications Act has jumped from 18 in the first year to 114 in the past year. The number convicted of the most serious offence has risen from 12 to 75. Auckland University criminologist Claire Meehan says the rise is expected as enforcement becomes less cautious and awareness grows.
But I think it's really important to note most of the offences, they aren't reported, they're not recorded and they're not prosecuted.
Herald Now Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Morena, good morning. A fine looking day for most of us well away to start the week. High pressure very much in control of our weather this morning, which keeps most of us fine and dry, and with some pretty warm temperatures as well, especially down here in the south. 21 degrees Celsius in Invercargill. That's normally what we see this time of year in places like Kerikeri. Generally a fine, dry, sunny story right the way up through Otago, up into towards Canterbury, Marlborough, Tasman. Even on that western coast it stays dry, just a touch more cloud in places like Westport as we head through the afternoon. We'll find some cloudier skies, especially in towards Taranaki and around in towards the likes of the Kapiti coast later in the day. But even here, plenty of sunshine, fine, dry, sunny story up this eastern coast as well. Areas of cloud bubbling up over the higher ground of Taupo, but generally a good looking day here too. As we head northwards, we'll meet some cloud running in from the top of the country and towards parts of Northland later in the day, but still plenty of sunshine as we head through the rest of Monday.
And that is it from us today. We're going to be back from 7 tomorrow morning. For more news, you can head to nzherald.co.nz. And a special thank you to our partners, Forsyth Bar, You Do It, Barker's, Max, 2 Degrees, GJ Gardner, Dilmar and Noel Leeming. From all the team at Herald Now, thank you for joining us this morning. We will see you tomorrow.